Hello everyone, this is Board Games and Bourbon, and I'm Glenn Flaherty, and thank you so much for being here. I love spending time with my friends. Today I wanted to talk about Shapers of Gaia, which is a Euro-style game that is a spatial game about putting territories down and filling it with animals and being the most successful at doing that. This game I requested from WizKids because I love this style of game. It says here 60 to 90 minutes to play, but I have to tell you turns move very briskly and it didn't feel that long. It says 14 and over, but I think decisions are pretty straight ahead, so I think you could go younger if you have a person that you've exposed to games before. 2 to 3 players is correct, and designed by Ian Cooper and Jan Gonzalez, which is interesting because when I was playing this game, I said, this game reminds me a lot of a game called Seastead. And when I looked up Seastead, sure enough, it was the same people, okay? And Seastead is a 2-player game that's also spatial, and it is tied into the world of a game called Flotilla, also by WizKids Games. So what do you do in this game? We're going to talk about a general overview of how to play it, specifically what you do. I'm not going to go into all the minutia, but give you a lot of the concepts. Kind of talk about the production quality in the rulebook and ultimately, my thoughts here. So the game is going to be this spatial board here that looks really cool. It's not that big of a board, but when you play it on the table, it actually takes up a little bit of space, more than you might think. This is the board. So it kind of looks like a terraforming Mars kind of board. And on this board, you're going to be putting lands down. Okay, on your turn, you have 2 options. You can either put a land down, one of these tiles that come in a variable color palette. Okay, you have purple, green, yellow. They all give you different resources. When you put down a tile, which is a free action to do, you can put it in proximity to wherever this little robot is on the board. The robot starts essentially in the center of the board. You put down your tile near it. You move the robot to that tile. Now that's the center location, and people keep building around it. Every time you put down this tile, it's going to give you rewards. You get a reward. The second person gets a reward you didn't choose because there's 2 on each, and then the third person, well, you're out of luck. Okay, now you would put this down to get resources because you needed to put animals down, and animals is really where the game play lives. So animals are going to exist on your player board. This is also where a lot of the interesting decisions exist in the game. Now, the animals you can put down go from 1 to 5 in cost. To put it on a board, like if it's onto a green tile, you have to pay 1 to 5 green resources. In the beginning of the game, you don't have that many resources. You have like 1 resource. So you're probably going to place a 1-level animal. I don't see an instance where you're going to essentially skip a lot of turns and wait to get your 5-point animal out. I just don't see that happening. It's a possibility, but you're probably going to put the lower ones out. And there's a lot of benefits to getting your animals out. When you put your animal out, you're going to get points. If it costs you 1 resource to put an animal out, you get 1 point in the game. It also is going to unlock a power. Now, on each level animal, 1 through 5, there's 2 options for your animal that will give you different powers. The powers are either instant or they're ongoing, and they are essentially like exchange rates to say, like, you can exchange this resource to do something else, or you can exchange 2 resources to get a point, or some combination of exchanging this for that in the game. Now, so you have to, that's a decision point, okay? So you take your animal, let's say I chose this right here, which is called a scavenger. It's a little, nice wooden tile of a vulture. You put it on the tile. Now you're there. And from that point, now a few other decisions happen. When you put down this kind of card, there's going to be a market of cards from which you can choose a power card. Okay, so when you get a power card, there's going to be 3, and they're going to have different powers. You have side A and you have side B. Side A, in this case, on this card, gives me a free resource, a yellow resource. Side B says I can trade in yellow resources for 2 other resources. So when you're choosing cards, you're really going to be getting cards that are going to synergize with each other. Okay, so I got a free yellow, then get a card that says yellow can turn into 2 resources. And you want to get more resources because the more resources you get, the more things you can build. Also, the higher you get on the track of resources, even if they're not used, you get points for them at the end of the game. Lastly, you take this card, and for the most part, you're going to put it on your player board on the colored biome where you built. So if it's yellow, green, or purple, in this case, I put my token on a green place, so I'm going to put my card on the green area of my board, and every time I collect those greens, all the green cards that I have in that area are going to trigger, so I can actually start building. There's one card in the game where I think they all go together, so all your cards will trigger at once, but your capacity for cards is lower in total. And that's really what the game is going to be. There are places you can build around the board that give you extra tokens that can turn into the point. There are moments where if you do not have the right resources, you can kind of take like this little death toxic token that's a negative point at the end of the game. And the more of those you build up in a very clever way, they start denying you more and more points. There's a space on the board, if you really have nowhere to go, called the vault space. That's quite expensive to put an animal there, especially as the game goes on, but you can kind of eke out a point. But there are players who can put an animal directly in there, and this probably behooves them the best. Lastly, in the game, there's going to be some patterns like, secondary scoring. And these cards are saying that if you put your animals out in certain patterns, you are going to get bonus points. These cards kind of seem like accidental points because as the game unfolds, you're really putting down your animals where you can. So if you end up in that pattern, that's, at least in our games, just kind of luck. Really? Now, as far as decision points in the game, there are decision points all along the way, although I wouldn't say any of them are brain burners, and many times you will see an option that makes sense. Let me give you an example. I want to put animals out because it gives me powers on the board, plus I get a card. You want to accumulate those as fast as you can. So the first decision is put out an animal. Okay, so yeah, I could put out a tile or an animal. I'm going to put out an animal. Okay, which animal do I want? Because I have 2 powers. Okay, that's debatable. What tile do I put it on? I'm going to put it on the tile where I have enough resources to put it. So, it's not as if like I have this full, wide array of tiles to put it on. I put it where I can. And if I have, if a space is going to require, let's say, 3 resources to put my animal on it, and I only have 2, and all my other resources are at 1, let's say green is at 2, everything else is at 1, well, I'm going to go for green because if I get 1 more resource, I'll have the 3 I need and I can put it there. So I need a resource, I'm going to put a tile out. When I put my tile out, what am I going to do? I'm going to put the tile out that lets me choose to get a green resource, of course. Okay, so there's, and then you are helping someone else because they get the secondary resource that you didn't choose, but those kind of choices kind of synergize. Again, with the cards then that I would pick that go on the side, I'm going to get the things that give me resources and then build up. So the first choice is probably pretty clear, or unclear, I should say. Do I want a conversion rate or do I want a free resource? But once I pick one card, that will dictate what I choose from there on. Okay, so decisions are mild, but there are plenty. I think this is a good introductory game for people. Plus, it's very bright. Production-wise, again, the bits are nice and wooden. They're nice and chunky. They feel good in the hand. The art is very colorful, and it's very bright. The cardboard's pretty nice. There are a few things in the production I would have changed, which is if my tile depicts forestry on it, I want my resources to match that. So for example, this tile here, which you can't see probably from where you are, has a picture of the mushroom in the middle. But the resource tile that matches it is a spore. Yeah, I understand spores and mushrooms go together, but it'd be a lot easier if they matched. The other thing is this little resource tracker here. Now, this resource tracker is a piece of paper that sits next to the main board, and this tracks you moving up and down. Now, this might be small, but the boards are actually, I don't know if it'll demonstrate it here, but they, do you see it spinning? All the boards in my game, they don't sit flat. they're all warped, and so it can spin, which is a problem when you have tokens sitting on top. They can easily move where they are. Also, for the size of the tokens that go on this board, the board really only fits 3 side by side, but there's 5 different tokens. So it gets crowded and tokens are sitting on top of each other. Again, you might move one but accidentally move another, or the table gets bumped, or this thing spins and they move. It's not a big deal perhaps, but you're spending more time thinking like, is that where it was? Did that move on me? Than you want to be doing. But that's really the only production hang up, I would say. Beautiful game. Otherwise, the rule book is not that many pages, but it's not as clear as it could be. Like, for instance, trying to figure out like the different spots you can move to in the game. Like, you can put an animal, on your different spots, it says on one page, but you have to go 3 pages away to learn that you can put it everywhere except on the water. And then you can also move to the vault. Again, that's not mentioned on the earlier page or necessarily with the water. It's actually in the subsection below, and then like there's no chart. There's a lot of symbols in the game, a lot of icons. There's no icon chart, which isn't a big deal. If you played a lot of games, you can divine what the icons mean. But there is at least one icon in the game that is not defined anywhere or discussed in here. And it is one that is essentially saying you can get any resource you want with a question mark on it. But if you didn't play a lot of games, you probably don't know what that is. And one thing you definitely know about games is you don't want to make assumptions, because that's how you end up playing games wrong. So it would have been good if that was in there, but ultimately, you can probably figure it out. Okay, so would I keep this game? Definitely going to keep the game because it's so colorful and easy to play, easy to set up. I would gladly play this when anybody wanted to. I would definitely play it with perhaps, I wouldn't say new players, but players who want a lighter experience, or for younger people that might be new to it. There's a lot of good things here. Just keep in mind that it is, I would say, if it was a BGG scale, complexity out of 5, 2.25. Okay, so that is Shapers of Gaia. That goes on my keeper list there for specific situations. A lot of good stuff to play around with there. Also encourage you to check out Seastead and Flotilla, 2 other games by WizKids that are kind of in the same world and kind of have the same feel. Okay, so until next time, friends, be well. Have a great day, keep gaming, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.